Hi, everybody. Brian Johnson from 7 Minute Security here, and I'm really excited to bring you a quick start guide to get up and running with Blumira, which is a SIM plus XDR security platform. In other words, Blumira keeps a watchful eye on your network environment and alerts you when it sees signs of evil. This is of particular interest to me because I'm a penetration tester, and all I do is, with permission, try to break into networks all day and night. But if you're an MSSP, I'm going to show you how easy it is to get up and running with Blumira. And specifically, we're going to cover 7 things because I'm a 7-minute guy, so I like the number 7. Number 1, we're going to install the Blumira Cloud Connector, which can plug into a variety of cloud-facing services and help you keep an eye on them from a security standpoint. Then I'm going to connect Blumira to my Microsoft 365 tenancy and show you how Blumira can protect us from attacks such as business email compromise, which continues to haunt many of our clients, right? Then I'm going to install the Blumira sensor, which is going to collect logs from my Active Directory network environment. I'm going to turn on, this is probably my favorite part, just because it's so geeky and fun, but I'm going to turn on the Blumira honeypot, which can entice attackers into unknowingly giving away their position on our networks. Then we'll install the Blumira agent within our test Active Directory environment. And this is super cool because you can have your clients and or servers set up in such a way that if they detect an attack of a certain severity level, they basically go shields up. They go into full isolation mode so that you can give them some TLC, figure out what's wrong, exercise the demons, and then you decide if and when they are allowed back on the network to talk to the LAN and to the internet. And then we're going to simulate some other real-world common attacks against the network and Active Directory to see if Blumira is able to detect them successfully. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with a few of my favorite Blumira features and also point you to some resources that you can look at and talk to get more information if you're interested. All ready? All right, let's do this. So this is my shiny, beautiful, blue, new Blumira dashboard. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to connect a cloud service such as M365 and start grabbing logs from it. So I'll just click Add Cloud Connector. And as you can see, there are a whole bunch of popular ones here that you can read more about and choose from. I'm just going to click Microsoft 365. And there are a few hoops you need to jump through to get your tenancy auditing tuned up to the proper levels. But good news for us is Blumira has a great video that walks you through everything step by step. Once you've done the steps to get the auditing turned up to 11, it's just a matter of punching in the application ID, the directory ID, and the client secret value. And we hit connect and we just wait for the initialization to complete. Now I fast forwarded mine a little bit for the sake of this video, but when I was doing it in real time, it took about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So, if you need to, grab a soda, grab a fruit roll up, come back, and eventually you should see the nice happy green symbol letting you know that you're online. All right, now back under settings, I want to call your attention to the detection rules drop-down menu here. And then within that, this search preset drop-down. And we're going to look at the supports response actions area. So as we kind of sift through these, let's test the cloud connector by emulating a sign of a business email compromise. And one popular thing that bad guys and gals love to do when they compromise our email accounts is go into our email box and set up a forwarding rule so that they snag a copy of all inbound mail and can kind of be a person in the middle and maybe wait for the right time to introduce themselves into an email conversation and forge a, phony ACH transfer and those sorts of shenanigans. So this rule right here, creation of forwarding, redirect rule, and exchange, this looks to fit the bill just fine. So to test this or kind of stage a smaller version of a business email compromise, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a message from my inbox, and I'm going to choose to create a new rule. And then I'm going to say that for any message that comes in from the Minnesota Department of Revenue, forward this to the bad guy or gal's address. Now, again, in a real world business email compromise, they would likely forward copies of all mail to the bad person email. But again, I just want to give you sort of a smaller example. So under add an action, I'm going to choose forward to. And then here is where the baddie would put in their bad guy at realbadguys.com or whatever it is. Okay. All right, great. So we hit save. And now with that all set and done, let's go over to our dashboard and take a look at any pending alerts. And we've got an alert for that forwarding rule that was just created. Now that by itself is cool, right? In a real world scenario, you would want to know immediately when there's signs of business email compromise so you can take action. But my favoriteest part of what you see here is that if you actually click into this alert, look in the upper right there, you see disable user and revoke sessions button. That's kind of the nuclear option for that user. You hit it and it disables all that user's active sessions. And that's so important in an incident response situation, not just to get the alert that something weird happened like we're seeing here, but to not even have to leave this dashboard and just hit boom, let's kick this user out of every session so we can dig in deeper and see what's going on. But in the meantime, you've stopped that attacker from rummaging around in the inbox and gathering pretexting for deeper, ickier attacks. Love that. Okay, so that's just one example. Now let's hop over to the summary dashboard again, and I want to show you the more traditional Blumira sensor install. We just did the cloud connector piece, which took just a few minutes. Fortunately, the sensor is just about as quick. So again, I'm at kind of my empty Blumira portal, and I kind of cleared out all the findings. It's a fresh slate because I don't have a sensor in my network yet. So I'll just go over here to sensors or to settings, then choose sensors from the dropdown. And then I will click add new sensor. And all you've got to do for now, you don't need to have hardware ready or anything like that. Just stage it with an appropriate name and description. So Tangent Town is the name of my Active Directory environment. So I'm calling it Tangent Town Watchdog. And I'll say this will protect the losers, or probably users. We love our users, right? This is going to protect the Tangent Town users. And I'm going to say, yes, email the sensor installation link to me. And then I set up the location of the physical office. I hit install. That's it. Just wait for a few moments, head over to my inbox, refresh, and poof, I have an email waiting for me with one large curl command. And this is the one-liner install you need to throw on your Linux OS to get the sensor built. That's it. So I'm just going to copy that because we'll need it in a moment. And then I'm going to head over into my domain environment to apply it. So I'm sitting on my test Active Directory network, and all I'm going to do is SSH into my freshly built Linux VM, which is at 192.168.10.111. I'll type in my password, and boom, I'm in at TT Blumira. That stands for Tangent Town Blumira, because Tangent Town is my Active Directory environment. And I just want you to keep in mind this system that we're logged into, maybe you're not super comfortable with Linux. All I did was take a vanilla Ubuntu server image, throw it on this VM, and just clicked next, next, next through the install. That's all I did. And now all I'm going to do to get the sensor part installed for Blumira is just paste that big command that we just saw on the last screen. There is one little prerequisite before I do this, though. I need to set the IP tables on this Linux VM to legacy. And this is something that's called out specifically by the Blumira documentation. So you'll hit this in your install journey. But it's just a command I can paste right from their documentation. So I am going to choose option 1 here for manual mode. And then that's it. That's kind of the prerequisites now complete. And now I can paste in that mega curl command that came to me. And we'll let it rip. So let's do a quick time check. We've got 2:38 p.m. Let's go get some snacks, a fruit roll up, a mint hot cocoa. That's kind of my beverage ammunition of choice. And we'll see. We'll fast forward time a little bit here, but we'll see you back when this sensor is fully installed and good to go. All right, and we're back, and we're at 2:41 p.m., so less than a 5-minute install, which I think is pretty incredible. Personally, I measure the awesomeness of things in 7-minute intervals or increments, so for me, this exceeded my expectations. All right, onward. So, as instructed, let's let this thing reboot. We'll do that with a sudo reboot. And now, just wait a little bit for that VM to come back online. And at my Blumira dashboard, let's check under Settings and Sensors submenu. We now have our happy sensor glowing green, and it's ready to collect some logs. Before we set up any endpoints with logging, I want to show you one of my favorite and deliciously evil, in a good way, features that Blumira offers on their sensors. So if we see our Tangent Town Watchdog sensor. If I click on the right side, the 3 dots, and I click View Details, and then I come down to the bottom of the screen, I've got some different modules that I can add to the sensor. So right now it's got the built-in logger module, which is cool. But watch this. I am going to choose to add a module. And then from the drop down, I'm going to choose the honeypot module. And I'll give it a name. Just call it whatever you want. I'll call mine Laugh Out Loud. And then I'll give that a few moments to finish installing. And what the honeypot module does is it simulates some enticing services that an attacker or a pen tester, it's always fun to have fun with pen testers, right? They might want to poke at as part of their network enumeration. So let's refresh our screen. And if we scroll down a little bit here, look at that. We've got our honeypot module, and just to the right of the hand there, yeah, we've got some interesting ports that are now up and listening, and attackers / pen testers can interact with them. So let's flip over and see what this looks like from an attacker's perspective. So I'm sitting here in my Tangent Town domain environment, and we can see that my system lives in the 192.168.10.x network. So I am just going to do a quick NMAP scan as if I were a pen tester or an attacker, just trying to learn more about this Tangent Town world. And I want to find ports and services that may be interesting for attacking or visiting later. And right away, what we're going to see is on the IP address of the sensor, there is some good stuff. There we go. 192.168.10.111. That's our Blumira sensor. And it looks like it's got port 21 for FTP open, port 22 for SSH open. and maybe some sort of web interface at port 8080. So I'm going to visit that URL in my web browser, the funky one with a port 8080, and check out this. It appears to be like a Synology, some sort of SAN or NAS device, but again, it's just our sensor. This is a fake honeypot interface. Now, some of these older network storage devices have default credentials if you don't change them out of the box. So that's a common thing for attackers and pen testers, is to try to come in, password spray this a bit, see if they can get in with a valid cred. So let's try admin. Okay, it didn't work. Let's try admin and blank. That's another common winner. All right, strike two. Let's try blank and then admin for the password. Okay, and once again, it didn't work. Now let's note the time in the lower right there of this attack. So 3:04 p.m. And if I head over to my email, what I'll see is, boom, we got an email alert telling me that the Blumira sensor had login attempts from 192.168.10.100, which was my workstation. And it even says some of the specific creds I tried, which is really cool. So if this is something you were to see in the real world, it's definitely cause for concern, because you might have an attacker or a pen tester on your network, or maybe you've got Bob from accounting who's taking CEH classes at night, certified ethical hacker, and is just practicing his NMAP skills. But either way, it's nice to know that this is happening. All right, so let's flip over. Let's go to our dashboard again and refresh it. And look at that. We'll see, hey, there was a honeypot attempt. And from this finding view, I can see a breakdown of the analysis of the event. And what I especially like is that the text in green there, it asks me to review the information and provide more context as to my knowledge of the event, which may prompt more interaction or more discussion with the Blumira team. In this case, I will assign myself as the responder. And then under the workflows area, I'm essentially going to say this was a test of my own, or this was a pen test, and no further action required. You can just close this finding out. Rad, right? Now, if I needed more help from support, I can go over here to add note, and I could say something like, hey, Blumira team, I need some more help. I'm not exactly sure what triggered this, or I could use a little bit more guidance and context on what to do from here. And I have had many interactions with the Blumira support as part of my sensor testing. And I can say firsthand, these are top-notch folks who are super smart and give good, actionable advice. Okay, now let's have one more bit of fun with the honeypot capabilities of the Blumira sensor. If you remember, we turned on the honeypot module, which enabled the web interface that we saw and we just interacted with. But it also spun up an FTP service. So if I'm an attacker, I definitely want to sniff around that a little bit more and see if it's got weak credentials on it too. We're back at my attacking machine now, and I'm going to pop up an FTP prompt, and I'm going to try to FTP into this service. Again, using some default or common credentials like admin and password, blank and password, those kinds of things. But it seems like those definitely aren't working. So I might move on, or I might set up a script to just blast away at this FTP server with a huge list of creds. Either way, if you're in the seat of defending your network, you'll be happy to get the alert of, hey, the FTP honeypot was interacted with. And once again, you can see about halfway down, there's the source IP, 192.168.10.100. That's us. So if it was a real emergency, right, we'd probably pull the plug on this affected endpoint and we'd do more investigative work. So let's verify. We got the email alert, but let's verify that we see this in the dashboard. So if we come over here, we refresh our dashboard, and there is our FTP honeypot activity. And if I click on it to get all the juicy details, then just like with the HTTP honeypot, I get, summary of the event, and I have to choose what sort of action to take on the ticket to close it out, ask for more help, etc. Great. Now, once again, what I'll do here, I'll just assign myself as the responder for the ticket, and I'll let everybody know that, hey, I was just having some fun poking around, or Bob from accounting was. Everybody can just stand down and sleep well tonight. And yeah, I just wanted to give you a taste of kind of some of the extra fun you can have with this sensor. We haven't even really gotten to much of the core functionality, but I think, from my opinion as a pen tester who does a ton of pen tests each year, in general, companies are underutilizing these honey credentials, honey services that can give you early warning signs that the pen tester / attacker is in bumping around, knocking into things on your network. As we've said before, the earlier you can detect this happening, the better. All right, now let's get to the goods. Let's actually configure the Tangent Town domain systems so that the domain controllers and the servers and the workstations are all funneling logs to Blumira and telling us about evil things that might be happening on those systems. Now, before we do, we're going to leverage a great group policy object file that Blumira provides to us in order to get the Windows logging to be more verbose. And the reason that's so important is that Windows logging isn't incredibly verbose just in the default settings out of the box. If you don't mind a shameless plug, it's a valuable one. I learned a lot about Windows logging through episode 507 of the 7-Minute Security Podcast, where Matthew Warner of Blumira talks about this in great detail, and he gives us some helpful insight for getting that logging turned up to 11, so we're seeing the security events that we actually care about. But again, as far as the Blumira sensor is concerned, it's beautiful because Blumira has done all the hard work for us. I am just going to download this zip file that they provide right off their GitHub repo. And I will unzip this. And really, all we need to remember at this point is this root folder. Where did we extract this info to? Because we're going to need it in just a moment. So we're sitting at downloads, Logmira folder. Remember that. Now I need to import this file. So I'm just going to click on Group Policy Objects, right click New. I'll give it a name, and I'll just call it Logmira for Blumira. And I'll hit OK. And then in the GPO folder, I'm going to locate it. And then I'm going to right click the GPO I just made, and I'm going to import settings. Now, here's where you need to remember where that root folder was for the Logmira download. So I will choose Browse, and then I'm going to, there's the Browse button. I'll click Browse, and then I'm going to head over to Downloads, and then Logmira folder. And then once I hit OK, I should be prompted to confirm, yes, is this the backed up GPO I want to use? It is. So I'll just keep going, hit yes, next, continue. Just kind of pound through this wizard. And once we hit finish, it'll take just a couple seconds, and it's good to go. So kind of the final piece of this GPO component is I've got to make it work, I've got to link it to the domain. So I'll just go right to the root of Tangent Town. I will right click and say, let's link an existing GPO here. And we'll pick Logmira for Blumira. Now, if you're curious to see what these GPO settings do, because, hey, if you're a IT security person, There's that general rule of, don't just download random stuff on the internet and run it, give it some scrutiny, right? What we can do is just go over to the policy itself. I'll expand my GPO objects here and right click, or just click on Logmira for Blumira. And then under the settings tab, you can read through here and you can see all sorts of different alert categories that are now turned way up to audit their success and or failure. Great. So we're almost done. Let's just look at the scope of this GPO because we need to make sure that it's applying to the right objects. So I'll just go to that first tab, Scope, and then under Security Filtering, about halfway down, I'm going to click Add, and we are going to add domain users. And then we'll click Add again, and we'll put in domain computers. And finally, domain controllers. Beautiful. So the logging components are all in place. And now we just need to get the agent install, the Blumira agent install on these endpoints. And then we're going to be in fighting shape. So back at the Blumira dashboard under Blumira agent on the left side and then installation, I'm going to kick things off by making an agent installation script. So I'm going to generate a key through this drop down, name it whatever you want. I'll just call it protect tangent town domain, and then device limit. You can put one on if you need to. I'm just going to put 5 since I'm going to deploy this in a relatively small environment. And then you give that a few seconds to churn. And just like our Blumira sensor, that was a gorgeous one-liner, we get the same thing for our agent install. Just a little custom PowerShell script that we can now copy, turn right around, and use it to install the agent on systems. So it's just a copy paste exercise, but let's see how quickly it happens here. So I'm on one of my Tangent Town systems. I opened up a PowerShell command box as admin, did a right click paste. I hit enter, and this part has not been sped up for time. I think we will find this all concludes in under 30 seconds. And certainly if you have, some sort of software mechanism or through GPO, you could automate the pushing out of this. I just wanted you to see from a manual install standpoint, it's not going to vacuum up a bunch of your time. Dandy. Now back at our Blumira dashboard, if we go under Blumira agent and this time go under devices, there they are. That's the first couple machines that I installed. Important note here, note that they are not isolated. Now, isolation would be triggered by an attack of a certain severity level that would cause these boxes to go what I call shields up, which is don't communicate with anything on the LAN, don't communicate with anything on the internet except Blumira HQ. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. I'm going to attack the domain controller from a position where an adversary has domain admin rights and wants to dump all the Active Directory hashes out of a domain controller. So I'm going to show you what that looks like using a tool called secrets dump. So again, we're saying I have the administrator, the DA account credentials, and I'm going to try to rip out all the hashes for evil purposes. And what you'll see here is the attack kind of starts and then fizzles out. And the reason that it fizzled out, if we were to actually flip over and look at the domain controller itself, which is what this imagery is from, the domain controller detected that attack via Defender and cut it off at the head. Now, when I run into this on a pen test, or when attackers run into this in their evil doings, if they can't dump hashes one way, they will try to find another. And one way that goes undetected oftentimes is doing it the quote unquote Microsoft way using NTDS util, which is a built-in command for Windows Server. So again, saying that I'm the adversary, let's do this the approved seal of approval method from Microsoft by, in this case, I'm going to create a directory, and I'm going to use this one-liner, this NTDS util one-liner, to create a legitimate backup of the domain controller to my C:\lol folder. And if I'm a baddie, right, I'm going to grab that snapshot and then run with it. But if we watch really carefully, look at what's happening. Watch what happens with my RDP connection. Because I took my domain admin account, I remoted in, I created this legitimate backup of the domain controller, and now, my RDP no longer works. And if I were to attempt to log in again, it wouldn't work. And that is because behind the scenes now, if we go look at our alerts, well, first of all, we see there's my backup command, that ntds util command that I used to make the backup. There's my exact command syntax. But additionally, if I go under Blumira agent and I look at my devices, chickadee, check this out. TTDC01 is isolated. So if I'm an attacker on the LAN and I'm trying to RDP or make an SMB connection or anything, it's going to hit dead air because this box is full Batman shields up mode and is talking to Blumira HQ and will only allow Blumira HQ, i.e. your dashboard, to free it from the shackles of isolation. So if I'm the blue teamer responding to this and I want to get more of a forensic look from an incident response point of view, I can just click the isolated machine, click device details. And note there, I could set it back to not isolated if I wanted to. But I'll probably click view unresolved findings and I can see all the events surrounding what triggered this isolation. And again, during this time, the box stays fully isolated. So I'm at least a little less worried about what the attacker is doing, at least to this particular box. So rad, right? Now, before we simulate some more attacks, I want to highlight something that's really interesting that happened when I first installed agents in the network. I got an alert that looked like this. It said, hey, there's a suspect process running in a public folder. And if you can see the name at the bottom of the alert, tropics2svc.exe. This was kind of interesting because before installing Blumira for this video, I was doing some additional pen testing and I had fired off an evil Tropics2 SVC executable that was running as a service, and it was designed to steal Kerberoast tickets, which is another fun thing that attackers like to do. And that was sitting running in memory at the time that this Blumira agent was installed. And I just think it's awesome that I got an alert on this for, really a compromised machine that happened before Blumira ever got in the picture. I mean, I think if I were to have purchased this as like an MSP or a customer, I think I could have reasonable expectation that from that point forward, Blumira would find signs of evil. But it's nice that it does some sanity checks immediately upon install and can maybe let you know, ooh, this doesn't look right. And so if this was a real world box, right, we'd pull this from the network and do some incident response. But I just thought was really impressive. Okay, so let's go back to simulating some actual hacking. And one thing I like to start with is my favorite attack called Kerberoasting. It's maybe not my favorite, but it's top 5. It's top 7 for sure. For background on Kerberoasting, and definitely go to the article that's on my screen to get the good and correct rundown of what Kerberoast and Kerberoasting is all about. But my hacky explanation or example would be the following that I see all the time on pen tests. There's a SQL service or an IIS service that is set to run on one or more systems under the context of a domain admin account. In fact, usually the DA account called administrator runs those services. When that happens, that information gets registered in such a way within Active Directory so that if I come along with just any valid AD account, it could be Bob from accounting, who doesn't have privileges to anything but maybe his own system. I can take any valid Active Directory account and ask Active Directory, hey, do you know of any of these such service accounts that are registered within AD and are running services like IIS or SQL or what have you? Active Directory, just by the way Active Directory is designed, it will say, yes, I do. Here's those instances. Here is the account username running that service and a blob, a hash blob. That information can be grabbed, copied to a clipboard, brought offline to my high-speed cracking rig over here, and I can offline just try to brute force and figure out what the clear text password is. And many times we're successful, and poof, presto changeo, we've got ourselves a domain admin account before lunchtime. So as you read through this article, you'll learn about how there are, the good news is, there are several ways to detect and defend against Kerberoasting, but I see a lot of security defense tools miss this opportunity. And again, this is low-hanging fruit. This is something attackers and pen testers are absolutely going after. I look for this on each and every pen test that I do. And so I really appreciate Blumira's elegant solution to this. They go at it by creating what I'm calling a honey Kerberoastable account using a script called DOGEMIRA or DOGEMIRA. Let's see that and let's install that in our environment. They make it available right on their GitHub. So I love that whole giving back to the community, showing research so that we all can be more secure. That rules. Before we run the script, though, I want to call your attention to the fact that this script not only installs a Kerberoastable honey account, but what is commonly known as an ASREPRoastable honey account. We'll talk about ASREProasting in just a sec. But for now, let's grab the script. All we have to do is download it and run it like so at the command line. So let's do that. So we'll choose to download the zip. And we'll extract this. And don't forget, when you're running, well, just about any script that installs something, you're going to want to pop a command shell from a privileged user's point of view. But I'm just going to type CMD here so I can get right to the folder that this PowerShell script lives in. You can see I'm running as administrator on the top. And then I'm just going to type in the name of the script and say 1, 2, 3, let's go. And now we can see at the bottom there, 2 different accounts were created. One of them being ASREProastable and one of them being Kerberoastable. Now, before we go any further, I want to show you the alert that popped the second that I added these 2 accounts, because this highlights another common security weakness we see in security, and that is letting us know, hey, a user with a non-expiring password was created. So we can see, default app pool underscore blah, 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 and Winnie underscore blah, blah, blah. The reason I want to call this out is because we see users with non-expiring passwords a lot in pen testing. To give you an example, there's one organization from a few years ago had a help desk intern who every employee that was hired during the summer they were working, they got the password of summer 2020, let's say. And the person was kind of new, and they just thought they're doing everybody a favor by setting every account to never expire. So then along comes a pen tester who does password spraying against the environment and does season plus year, because that's still a pretty common password people love to pick, is current season plus year plus exclamation maybe. But anyway, after several rounds of password spraying, the pen tester hit upon summer 2020, and didn't just get into one account, got into like 30 accounts. So in general, that's just something for you to be aware of in your environment. But getting this alert from Blumira helps identify maybe some of those administrative whoopsies where a new hire gets created and someone ticks the box for never expire. In general, you probably don't want that. So it's nice that Blumira gives you a sanity check and calls your attention to it. All right, let's get back to hacking. Now, in order to pull off the Kerberoasting attack, this is a little bit of a shameless self-promotion, but I'm going to head over to bpatty.rocks, which stands for Brian's Pen Testing and Technical Tips for You. And I'm just going to use the search in the upper right here, and I'm going to search for Kerberoast attack. There it is. And if you read through that little cheat sheet, this is kind of our online wiki of pen testing tips and tricks and scripts. We're going to copy the command syntax for a tool called Rubius. And we'll just paste this in our tangent town environment to execute the Kerberoasting attack. You get to see this is how quick and easy it is to grab those accounts, grab those hashes, bring them offline, and maybe be DA in a matter of minutes. All right, so I wrote the Kerberoastable hashes out to the kerberoast.txt file, and there we can see there's that default app pool account that we created a few moments ago with Blumira's script. All right, now in the real world attack, right? I copy this hash data, I bring it offline to my offline password cracker and try to figure out what the credential is. But for now, let's just hop back over to the Blumira dashboard. I'm actually looking at the manager view here, and we can see Kerberoast attack behavior. And we can even see, yes, IP address of 192.168.10.10. That's the Windows desktop that I did the Kerberoasting attack from. So in the real world, once again, we'd probably yank that off the network, perform an exorcism, and get evil off the system before letting it back on the network. So fun, right? Okay, now let's look at ASREPRoasting before we continue. And that attack can be carried out in a very similar way using that Rubius tool that I used for Kerberoasting. All I got to do is essentially sub out the word Kerberoast with ASREPRoast. And then we can find ASREPRoastable users. And I'll show you a quick way to find those and eliminate those from your network in a moment. But just want you to have an appreciation for how quickly these two roasting attacks can happen and how devastating they can be to your environment. And if we look at the ASREPRoast.txt, there's the Winnie _ blah, blah, blah account that once again was created by the Blumira script. Okay, and once again, let's look at our finding summary, and there it is, right at the top, ASREPRoasting attack. And so, of course, we could go in here and respond accordingly. I also, though, want to show you a kind of dangler alert that I didn't even catch. This happened shortly after I installed the Blumira agent. And remember a few minutes ago, I told you how that suspect process alert popped. I got another one here saying, hey, just want to call your attention to the fact that Splashtop is installed on this box. And it is legitimate in this case, but it was installed weeks ago. I love that Blumira is kicking over that rock and telling me about potential remote access tools that are installed, because that's a common thing for baddies to want to do. It gives them a nice, legitimate looking backdoor that tends to fly under the radar because they're not installing malware to stay persistent in your environment. They're installing Logmira and TeamViewer and Splashtop. So great to know that going forward, right? If Bob from accounting's like, oh, I'll bypass that whole VPN and multi-factor thing and I'll just install Splashtop. Nice to know that you could get alerts in those categories as well. All right, if I click into the alert, we do get some more context about Splashtop. And again, we see in a lot of these breach breakdowns that, there was a C2 shell on this and that and the other. And yes, that definitely happens. But boy, if attackers can just use off-the-shelf remote access tools, Kaseya, Go to My PC, etc., they can give themselves a pretty benign-looking backdoor and dwell in the network for days, weeks, months, years. In fact, that is often how they hang around that long. But anyway, let's finish our discussion on ASREProastable users. I just wanted to show you really quick what makes a user ASREProastable, and how to fix it. If you knew, for example, if the Winnie account was actually some other user account, it's a very quick fix. You would just find that user, look at their properties, and then under the account tab, scroll down with the account options, and that last box there, do not require Kerberoast pre-authentication. When that box is ticked, that's what makes an account ASREProastable. Anecdotally, I still see this on quite a few pen tests, and when I bring it to the customer's attention, they usually say, I don't know why that box was ticked. Let's untick it and see what breaks. And so far, I've not had an instance where they go, oh, we legitimately needed it set this way. Sweet. Now, let's do a few more attacks against the environment. Let's see how Blumira holds up. We're going to start from the position of an attacker who has access to a low privilege account called low priv. One word, you can see it there, LOWPRIV. And for this next little demo, I'm using a tool called NetExec. And that plus symbol that you see in the tool output, that just indicates that I have authenticated against the domain controller, which is TTDCO1. The green plus says, yes, this account is valid, but it's not a domain admin or enterprise admin. Because if it had higher privileges, you would see admin or pwned in yellow text next to it. Now, one of the things I might do as an attacker is I might want to pull down a list of all the valid users in the Active Directory list and then spray passwords against them to see, maybe I can find a legit account that is a domain admin that's using a bad password. So I can extract a list of users by just adding the active users flag to my initial authentication command. And I can pull that down into a text file. But before I go further and actually spray the credentials against the domain, I want to know what kind of password policy we're working with, right? Because if I'm going to be spraying 8-character passwords, but it's actually a 15-character requirement, that's not a very smart use of my time. So to figure out what the password policy is, once again, I'll use NetExec and I'll use the passpal flag. And as we can see, it's pretty weak. It's a 7-character minimum. And no complexity. So what I did in this passwords.txt file is I made a very simple list of passwords using seasons plus years, kind of like we were talking about. And now what I'm going to do is use NetExec to load a list of users in a file users.txt, and I'm going to spray all of them with the passwords that I put in the passwords.txt file. So we're going to let that run, and it will go through all users. It'll try the first password in my list and then hit every account. Then the second password in my list, hit every account, and so on. And obviously, if you're a pen tester doing this, this is where I want to re-emphasize. You got to know what the password and lockout policy is, because you don't want to be just shotgunning creds around the environment, locking up everybody's accounts. Your client is not likely to take kindly to that. But as our password spray exercise concluded, look at that. At the very bottom, we got into an account called Tommy with season plus year, spring 2025. And in parentheses, you see admin. So Tommy actually is a domain admin. We popped his account with a little bit of password spraying. We're going to abuse that and have a joyous dandy time doing so, right? Bad news for us as attackers, good news for folks using Blumira. if we refresh the dashboard, we can see several alerts that were generated due to the password spraying. So once again, if you see, an IP or several IPs were kicking up this alert, bad stuff is happening, and you want to get on that and, pull those systems off the network, kick into incident response gear. And once again, that is the whole password spraying methodology and attack. It's just something I don't see a lot of MDRs pick up on. They seem to be tuned for kicking up alerts if we were to mass lock out accounts. But as I said, we don't do that, or try really hard not to. Attackers who are going to be smart about this are going to look at the domain policy and not batch lock out accounts. So it doesn't really make sense to me that a customer wouldn't get alerts until a bunch of accounts get locked out. But anyway, going back to the low privilege account that we have access to, one thing an attacker might want to do is try that credential against all machines and see if it has local admin access anywhere. So again, back to the perspective of where I'm just leveraging my low priv account that doesn't have access to much. I might stage my net exec command to boom, hit every IP in the 192.168.10.x subnet, authenticate against each one, and see any places where I might have local admin. And I do. On TTDT01, I've got local admin. So, if I'm seeing this on a pen test, one thing I'm likely to worry about is, the company might figure out that I have this low priv cred. And so they might change the password on me. And if they do, then in this case, I want to make my presence persistent on TTDT01 so I can hang out there forever, even if they change the low priv account password. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run netexec again, just against TTDT01, which is the .10 IP. And I'm just going to use a Windows built-in tool called net to create a new local user and also add it as a local admin to the box. So this is just a fun one-liner to know as a pen tester and to know to look for as a blue teamer. But there's that net command, which built into Windows. So this command essentially says, add a new user called Ghost with a password of secretpass1, answer yes to that prompt, and also add that user to the local admin group. Okay, now we'll see here the command was completed. All right. So again, if the customer at this point changes the password on low priv, I don't really care because I have a backdoor local admin credential for TTDT01. Okay, so I'm thinking I'm cooking with gas now because I've got my persistence. But if we refresh the dashboard, we've got an alert. Now this one is interesting in that we're given specific Windows commands to find this, I'll just call it a phantom local admin that was created. So I'm going to assign this. Let's assign this to me as the responder. And then I'm just going to copy this this command that Blumira gives me, and I'll run it on TTDT01, which is the system in question. Okay, so we're on desktop 01. Let's paste this command and look at that. It has identified our Phantom of the Opera account called Ghost. So from an incident response standpoint or pen test investigation standpoint, it's nice to be able to lay out a timeline and go, oh, we can see what they did. They added this persistent account. That's cool stuff, right? Right. All right, I want to call your attention to a couple other things. The first one is the rule detection list under settings. Blumira has over 240, and you can search by alert name. If you found yourself wanting to disable an alert for some reason, you could. I guess I wouldn't really recommend it, but you you could do that. So there we go. There's our Kerberoast attack. There's our ASREProast attack, right? If I wanted to disable it, I could, but especially that one, please, if I may plead with you, don't disable that. And also, if we go under reporting, there are some really powerful reports you can build and schedule. So I'll go under popular reports. You can see they've built a bunch of canned popular reports for us to choose from, like AD and Azure. You can also build a custom report if you wanted to. So we can come into report builder, and you could choose the time range you were interested in, and then pick the data sources you want to sift through. So in this case, I've got my M365 tenant. I could search that as well as my Blumira logs. And then under scheduled reports, you can see I've already built some that I care about that I want to have fire every month. And, this is some great territory for, I don't want to be cliche, but management folks, understandably, they want reports. Is this thing, how many alerts is this thing catching, and how quick were we able to detect and respond to incidents now that we have Blumira? Scheduled reports is a great way to demonstrate that data and show that value. And I also wanted to touch on the executive summaries that get generated every month and quarter automatically. So this is just, again, I didn't go in and configure any of this ahead of time. It's just made for us right out of the gate. So if we click into one of these, here's some of that rich data I was talking about. Blumira looked at almost 300 gigs of data, and here's the findings. Here's the ones that were determined to be actionable threats. It is really, really cool to see. And I think, especially anecdotally with the conversations I've had with my clients, many of them are fighting a battle with management about justifying a service such as Blumira. And they're told by management, well, you're just going to have to do it yourself using in-house tools. And I think once you see the number of events that come into Blumira, get analyzed, they separate noise and signal, and then give you valuable events and alerts to actually take action on, I think it just helps make a stronger case for, yes, this was a great investment for us. So overall, I think it'll be just apparent from what you've seen and heard so far. I'm really impressed with what Blumira has to offer. Just to do a quick recap of everything we covered in a relatively short amount of time. We installed that cloud connector. We simulated business email compromise. We installed the sensor. We turned on the honeypot, and we poked at the web service and the FTP service to show how you might snag or ensnare a pen tester / attacker in your honeypot. We looked at the very easy, just out of the box zip file with a big GPO file in it that you can import into your Active Directory environment to turn all the logging up to 11 so that you can, get a much better verbose view of things that pass and fail different audit checks. And then we saw how quick and easy it was to install the Blumira agent software, and how it kicked some alerts right out of the gate to me saying, we've got services that are malicious. We've got remote software that shouldn't be there. That was awesome. And then also demonstrated how an attack such as secrets dump, which extracts hashes from Active Directory, that would put the host in what's called isolation mode, where it goes shields up and it refuses to talk to anything on the LAN or WAN until you explicitly come into the dashboard and free it from its isolation. And then we looked a little bit at the powerful reporting and executive summaries that Blumira can provide as well. The only thing I really wanted to show you, but can't really for this video, is how great Blumira's people are. And they've got just a top-notch support team. You can meet some of them indirectly and hear more about them. We had some great in-the-weeds, fun nerdy discussions on a couple of episodes of the 7-Minute Security Podcast. So I welcome you to listen to those. Just go to our site and search for the word Blumira and you'll find it. And then, of course, really where you want to go is Blumira.com to learn a lot more about what I talked about today. You can even start a chat with their cute little Mira bot at the bottom. Just because I neglected to mention it at the start of the presentation, I wanted to close with just a little story about how I met Blumira. I was doing a podcast series called Desperately Seeking a Super SIM for SMBs. And I was just complaining and lamenting about the fact that a lot of these services were just astronomically priced, and there didn't seem to be anything offered to my customers, more like in the 200 to 700 employee range. And someone from Blumira heard me whine and said, "Hey, would you like to take Blumira for a spin?" And I said, "Yes, but I have a very hostile pen testing lab that I would throw this in, and I would be wanting to hack the heck out of it." And they didn't bat an eye. They said, "Yeah, go for it." And so I took it for a spin and was very impressed at the alerts that I got right away, like the ones that I showed you. But for the few things that were not detected, I put those together in a list and I sent those to Blumira. And I was a little nervous about how they might respond, because I've done that for several big brand MDR services. And the response I got in those cases were not always friendly. I think people felt like, don't come into my house and tell me what to do. And they would sort of secure explain to me that it was not really a problem, or that what I was doing wasn't realistic, or it's not really how an attacker would operate. So I sort of held my breath, but Blumira responded immediately and said, "Oh, this is really interesting. Let's get you on a Zoom with some of our engineers, and we want to understand what tools you used, how you recreated these attacks." And so we just had a blast, nerding out for about an hour. And they, were as excited as I was. And they took back all the information and said, "We're going to get back to you on this." And in a very short amount of time, they said, "Okay, now rerun those attacks and let us know what happens." And just like that, I got alerts instantaneously. And they said, "Yeah, this is cool. Now we'll bake this into, all our alerts. And now, all our customers will benefit from this." And that was so much fun. And that, to me, is the kind of relationship you want to have with a service like Blumira. You want to be able to go to them with questions, concerns. You want to be able to post pen test, talk to them about things that maybe they missed. And you want their response to be, "Oh, that's interesting / concerning. We want to learn more. Put us in touch with your pen tester. We want to see if there's a blind spot in the configuration, if there's a new alert that needs to be written, if there's an existing alert that maybe needs to be tuned." That's awesome. But if you get this sort of chest puffing, like, "Oh, don't worry about it, no one's actually going to do that in a real world attack, blah, blah, blah," I would recommend, as a pen tester, right, probably time to start looking around for a new partner. And of course, I'd recommend you go talk to my friends at Blumira. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day. Thanks. Bye.